Caesar will I'll turn it over to Caesar, and he'll introduce our next speaker.
Folks, so I've got the honor of introducing our very next speaker here today at TFF. We're really excited to introduce SteveFenn. And now Steve is a Tableau expert, and he's employed by Tesselation. He pretty much describes himself as living in Tableau. When he's not in Tableau Public, he's doing a lot of training as well as developing reports for company Tesselation. He says it's really his biggest hobby, and he's incredibly passionate about this. So with no further ado, I'd like to present SteveFenn with a better way to learn and teach Tableau date hierarchies. So this is really awesome. Thanks, Steve.
So I'm very excited to be teaching about Tableau dates. I've been teaching Tableau classes for years, and beginners often get confused by dates because they are so different from the way that other programming languages and softwares approach these kinds of data fields, but they are very powerful once you wrap your head around it. And I'm hoping to get everyone towards that kind of eureka moment. Also, if you're already experienced, someone's going to ask you questions about dates at some point. So think about different ways to describe them. And I'm going to go away from describing them solely in terms of discrete versus continuous. I use the terms exclusive versus inclusive. There we go. Better way to learn and teach date fields and their hierarchies in Tableau. So traditionally, they call this discrete and this continuous. But those words are right there, and you could shift them within those quote unquote discrete or continuous hierarchies. Let's go back to basics for a second and talk about the concepts of date fields and a better way to understand them from the start. Every value in a date field in Tableau has to have year, month, and day of month, and then it can be a date field. If you've only got two of those, it's not really going to work. Reshape your data. If it's formatted in one of these ways, fantastic. Tableau will recognize that. Many more obscure date formats will work as well. Don't make sure they're not mixed up though. If your data is really messy and one record says March 1st of 2018 and another says 3/1 of 2018, you might get no responses on one of those formats. So make it consistent, but whatever format it is, it should work. Now let's talk about how to understand these hierarchies. I like to use the terms exclusive versus inclusive hierarchies. So you get a date field that's got year, month, and day of month, and you can navigate between year, quarter, day, week number, day of the week. But then you get into the context menu of your dates, and you see two different options that list off year, quarter, month, year, quarter, month. What gives? Think of this first one as the exclusive range, where you are only getting back information on the level that you are choosing in that moment. So if you choose exclusive month, any January data point is looking across January in all years in the data set. As opposed to this range down here, which I call the inclusive hierarchies, in which you are getting back your chosen level and all levels above it that are generally expected for precise data presentation. So when you choose inclusive month, as the preview value on the right-hand side shows, you're getting back month and year. Whereas that exclusive month, you're only getting back the month. And so it's all records from all Januaries, all records from all Februaries, etc. in that exclusive range. You're more looking at overall seasonality. So that's the big shift from trying to describe this is discrete or this is continuous, which is how it's traditionally been taught. So what does this look like in practice? Here we have a chart driven by exclusive months and exclusive years. Notice that exclusive date fields default to giving you discrete values. So we've got discrete headers of our months along the bottom. And if that was the only thing driving this chart, then we just have single bar charts for total quantity of each of those months across all 4 of these years. Because year of order date is on the color shelf, we instead have stacked bars, and each of those individual segments of the stacks is the intersection of years and months, but driven by 2 separate pills. Inclusive dates, on the other hand, we can get both levels of that information from just the single pill. And it's going to give us a continuous axis that runs all the way left to right. So when we're in inclusive months, we've got both month and year running all the way across, giving us the total sales here. As with anywhere else, when we've got continuous values being displayed, our pill is green. Just as with the exclusive dates driving discrete values, we've got a blue pill. So let's do some practice on this. Use some inclusive and exclusive dates together. I'm going to go to Tableau. I think I'm going to Tableau. There we go. And we're going to create an area chart real fast. I drag sales onto rows. I drag dates onto columns. Notice that every time you drag a date onto a shelf, it's going to default to exclusive years. As with any hierarchy, it's going to the very top. This is probably why Tableau is never going to put decades into the date hierarchies. And what I want here is inclusive months to create something similar to the chart we just saw. I'm going to switch it on the marks card to area. And we've got it running all the way left to right. But what if I want to break between December and January of every year? I can drag order date onto color. And now we've got separate colors for every year. And it also means that because we get a discrete break at the end and beginning of each of these years. I'm also going to put category onto my rows shelf so that we can compare our different categories and their sales. Nice and simple. And if you come back to this through the slides, you'll see where those pills line up if you want to try to recreate this on your own. Now let's practice creating a calendar, all from just one date field. Some people consider this advanced, but it's actually really simple once you wrap your head around it. It's just a lot of different uses of exclusive date hierarchies. Back to Tableau. Build this from scratch real quick. First, you got to think about how a calendar is generally organized, and that's days of the week across the top. And then, though it's usually not explicit, it's the week numbers driving the rows. So I'm going to drag order date onto columns, open up the context menu, and in the exclusive range, I do have to hover over the more option to get to weekday or week number. In this case, I want weekday across the top, so I'm choosing that. I'm going to drag order date onto rows now. Go back to that context menu. Again, within the exclusive range, I hover over more and choose week number. And I want this to be more concise and only focused on a single month. So I'm going to drag order date onto filters. Doesn't make assumptions for you when you're going to the filter shelf, which is a very good thing. Instead gives you the menu to ask, what do you actually want here? And I'm going to choose month/year. So we can define based on both of those at the same time. And I choose October of 2015. And what do you generally expect to find where the ABCs are sitting right now? The day of the month. So I'm going to drag order date onto text. Open up the context menu one more time and choose exclusive day. This is about the only context in which I've ever used exclusive day, by the way. And now we've essentially got a calendar. I'd like to convey some data through this. This is just kind of the interface. So let's drag profit onto color. A lot of those dates got really hard to read. Let's instead make it more of a heat map calendar. 1 click to get it, 2 clicks to get it done. Open up your open up your menu where it says automatic at the top of your marks card and switch from text to square. Nice and simple. A little bit of quick formatting and we'll be pretty much done. The tooltips, when you hack at something to create a chart like this, are a mess. We've got the day of the month, then the weekday, then the week number, just not very useful. My quick solution in this case is just drag order date onto the tooltip shelf, click that tooltip shelf right here, and I'm going to delete everything before attribute of order date. I like to center my text. And while we're here, one of my pet peeves, include command buttons. You'll leave that selected to show you the problem, and then we're going to fix it. It seems kind of nice that you can keep only or exclude or view data, and your audience can as well, but unless they need that power, they're going to abuse it and screw something up. In fact, I've seen a lot of end users click on something and kind of double click a little bit and end up keeping only, and they can only see one data point, and they're sending you a nastygram because your dashboard is broken. Don't let them do it. In your tooltip menu, deselect include command buttons. Only give them that power if they need it. And this calendar can be really, really nice within a dashboard to be the target of interactivity or to target interactivity on other dashboard items if you've got a particular daily concern for your audience. And so I put together a dashboard that does so. Got a variation. All of these are focused on profit, where and when has Superstore lost money. All of this was built from Tableau's own Superstore fictional data that comes prepackaged with every version. And so we got a variation on our area chart, this time driven by profit. We've got a map of statewide profits, and we've got our calendar down here. Oh, quick note before we go any further on that. There are a couple of dates missing. Why is that? Well, Tableau is very data literal, and sometimes this is good, sometimes this is annoying. We're not going to get into involved fixes here. I'll just say that there are no data records in Superstore in October 15th, on the 23rd, or the 30th. And so Tableau doesn't render a data point. There are ways to get around this. You can use Tableau Prep, Alteryx, something else to reshape the data so you've got some zero or null records on those dates so that data points can be rendered. There are certain Tableau hacks that I'm not going to dig into to try to approach that without data shaping, although some of them get kind of quirky. But sometimes this is actually an advantage. I've seen organizations where the only places they don't have data is on their holidays and their weekends. And the calendar view kind of backs up the message that those are holidays and those are weekends. And that's just fine. Okay, but let's look at how this can work with interactivity if you set it up well. So I've got a message here, click a date or day of the week to filter the map. I want to focus this map only on Saturdays in October of 2015. I simply click the Saturday header, and these are my states that had some sales on those days, and there is their profit for those sales. click on, oh, we lost some money on the 20th. Where did that happen? Looks like it was something going wrong in Tennessee. What about interactivity that's running to the calendar? So we can choose to focus on a different month. I've set up some action filters where we can click on any month within our area chart, and that will now be the focus of our calendar. And from there, we can click to focus the map. Nice and simple. And I think after the awkward start of my session, trying to get things screen shared, I might have sped through things a little bit fast. If you're watching on YouTube, there are YouTube apps or Chrome extensions that allow you to watch YouTube videos at 70, 80% speed. You might want to do that if you're a Tableau beginner. Just go back to the beginning, find one of those apps, and slow me down a little bit. But I am actually ahead of my schedule of when I wanted to finish this up. So we've got some time for Q&A. I could dig into how I built this dashboard, or particularly the interactivity of it, if somebody has a question along those lines. I'm going to pull up the chat window right now and see if anybody's got some of those questions. I will be sharing that workbook. I'm going to publish it on Tesselation's Tableau Public page. We've got a new Tableau Public page of our own for Tesselation projects and things inspired by our work with clients. And so I will publish that and share it on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @stathunting. I will also have a blog post on the Tesselation blog with my slides from this presentation that will be available to you as well. In fact, I believe it's up now. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here. Oh, another quick note before we go into more Q&A. Why instructors should take this approach? Less confusion. The general Tableau method of saying these are discrete and these are continuous requires that you redefine discrete and continuous. If we take this approach of saying these are the exclusive hierarchies, these are the inclusive hierarchies, and then layer in that they are by default driving discrete or continuous axes, but you can change those, then discrete and continuous can remain defined as they are everywhere else in Tableau. And you're not confusing discrete versus continuous in other Tableau concepts just because you're taking a different approach in dates. Tableau's general definition of discrete versus continuous is discrete values are treated as finite, and generally discrete fields add headers to views. Continuous field values are treated as infinite range, and generally continuous fields add axes to views. And so when dealing with dates, you start by talking about exclusive versus inclusive, and only talk about discrete and continuous in terms of the display and the axes or headers. In my experience, that is a much easier thing for people to wrap their heads around and less likely for them to get confused by the concept of discrete and continuous in other areas.
Steve, I don't know if you caught a question that we got from Sean Davis. And he was asking if you could go into resolving blank dates.
Resolving blank dates. Yeah. That one's, I'm going to punt on that, and I'm going to get back to it on Twitter because that can be a bit messy. If you've got the ability to use Alteryx or Tableau Prep or manipulate or shape your data before it reaches Tableau, in my opinion, in many ways, that's a really good way to go because you have control over it to just generate rows for those dates in which other information is not is not rendered, in which we don't have data for those dates. Just automatically have Prep or Alteryx generate rows for those dates, or SQL, whatever you need, so that the data points get rendered. there are various ways to try to hack at it in Tableau, but when trying to build that into these slides, the approach that I defaulted to didn't work. So I'm not going to recommend any of those as an overall solution. All right, let me scroll back through the chat and see if I can find some other questions. Yeah, I will be sharing the workbook. I've already got the slides, and you can find those at tesselationtech.io/insights. Tessellation is 2 S's, 2 L's. Usual places people get tripped up on the spelling there. And I believe the blog post is up. If it's not, it will be very, very shortly. And that'll have the slides from this deck, and I'll be posting the Tableau workbook as well and sharing that on Twitter. I'll probably put a link in the blog post too, now that I think about it. All right, I'm seeing no other questions in the chat window. And so real quick, I'll put on screen the actions that are driving the interactivity on the dashboard, as I anticipate that could be a common follow-up question for folks that would come across this on YouTube. We go to the actions, the dashboard menu, select actions, and I was naughty and didn't label my filters, but filter 1 is running from my area profit to my calendar profit, source sheets and target sheets, running action on select. Very important in this case to run on single select only. I don't want to cram a lot of different calendars together in that small area in the bottom right of the dashboard. And clearing the selection will leave the filter. So I'm always seeing the most recently selected month in that calendar. So that's my interactivity running top to the calendar. And filter 2 is running from source sheet of the calendar to target sheet of the map. Again, running action on select. So every time you click on a date or set of dates, it's not single select only. And clearing the selection will show all values. So when we deselect, we're back to the overall map. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much, and I hope it was useful. Check the chat one more time. I think we are good. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the rest of Fringe Fest.
Thank you so much for this, Steve. This is really good. Really, really helpful and insightful. I think we've all learned a lot more about date parts. Thank you.
Good.
Well, let's see. Let's go through and talk about our next presenter. I don't know if I've seen David Tim present yet, so I'm really excited and eager to see his presentation. David comes to us from Glendale, Arizona, where he's the city's he's our SharePoint expert. So definitely a very tough and